Okay, we're live. Hello, everyone. Hope you had a good weekend. It was a interesting weekend, as we were just chatting before, and certainly a bit glum in terms of the weather as well. But hope you had a good, chilled, and rejuvenating time. It's Monday. I'm certainly feeling buoyed up after an exhausted week last week, and I'm joined by two people I've had a lot of interactions with over the years as mentors and being at conferences and doing similar chats to this in different formats. So first and foremost, welcome Phil and Simon.
Thank you, Martin. Good to be here.
And I'll try and guide to who to speak when. Otherwise, it's going to be that. Who was that question for? But yeah, I mean, maybe we kick off with Simon and set to flip a coin. But Simon, if you want to go first, just give a bit of a background. I've been doing it very open. Anything you care to talk about, backstory. But just for people that have not come across you, really, just to give that intro, would be really great.
Just in about an hour. Is that enough?
Yeah, great. Yeah, at least actually.
In terms of me, maybe I'll jump to the in terms of the relationship. I used to work for a bank and was very restless and wanted to travel and explore other things. And I hadn't really identified or acknowledged that I was a short person. Cutting a long story short, I came across Phil Friend, who ran a business. I found something called the social model that made sense to me, and I'd already done training courses. I'd already run lots of training courses in the bank. So I moved that across and went into business with Phil. And after about 10 very successful years, then we gradually realized we were interested in other things. The thing I spent more time was comedy. Abnormally Funny People was a team of comedians that we set up, which is still going. We realized this was going to be a labor of love. I set it up with a chap called Steve Best, who's my best friend from school and a stand-up. So yeah, and then I still run a tiny little business where I do a bit of training consultancy. I do the hosting for BBC Ouch from time to time, which is lovely. And I've joined a couple of boards as a non-exec and a trustee, which means I'm old and responsible, apparently, maybe even wise, which scares the life out of me. I didn't think that would ever come. I think that may be it. And the hardest bit is family and travel. I'm missing both of them at the moment.
Yeah, that was phenomenally good way of summarizing decades of amazing work into 2 minutes. Well, you should get an award for that. Got Michael on LinkedIn saying hi, you three great.
Hey, Mike.
Oh, hi, Mike. Yeah, good to see Mike. Yeah.
So, I love this format of bringing in, even if it's just a little comment, it's just lovely to include the people watching with us as well.
We both work with Mike. Used to be Environment Agency, and I think he's at the Alzheimer's Society now.
Okay.
Yeah, and I knew him when he was at Lloyd's Banking.
Of course, yeah.
Yep. He came into the room for an hour to watch our PDP personal development program, and he stayed all day. Good bloke. Nice to see Mike still at it, as they say.
Yeah.
Would it help to just
you're
Simon,
next, Bill. You're next.
Yeah,
your background.
I'll try and be equally succinct. Yeah, well, before I met Simon, before I was in the disability arena, I worked primarily as a social worker. I used to run very large institutions for very naughty boys, and I was a social worker, and I loved it, and it was great, and all that stuff. And then I got made redundant, or I made myself redundant, and by pure accident got into disability work through meeting Susan Scott Parker, who was, founder of the Employers Forum on Disability, Stephen Duckworth, who was around at that time as well. Set up a business, got involved, met Simon, as he says, and then we had a fantastic time together, did some really exciting things, I think. And then, as he said, we went our separate ways. Mine was more, I had a stroke, and that kind of affected me. But I went off into the kind of voluntary world. So I became chair at Radar, that then was Disability Rights UK, and also I'm chair currently of the Research Institute for Disabled Consumers. So I sort of went off into the voluntary stuff, but then never lost touch with Simon, always been in touch. And the podcasts that we do, we started doing about 4 years ago now, amazingly 4 years ago. And we're mates, and we do stuff together now in a very different way. So it's been a fantastic journey. And like Simon, very similar to the missing family and stuff, because a bit like you, Martin, we haven't been out, I haven't been out, so COVID-19.
Yeah.
Can't wait for COVID-20, the son of COVID. It's getting very boring, this one.
Brilliant. We got another little comment coming in from Chris. Afternoon, everyone. Looking forward to today's Graham Norton show. It's been the Graham Norton show of disability. So
is that the style? Yeah. We're all on the couch together.
Yeah, we are. We just need alcohol. It's a bit early when you're on a Monday.
Yeah.
Cool. And obviously you've both been on my podcast, so it's more the audio version, and there's a lot we got through about the sort of general story and involvement in disability. And I think I'd recommend anyone watching, listening to this now or on the replay to check out the podcast. I thought we could just go a bit sort of deeper into certain themes today rather than just the whole from then to now journey stuff. Obviously you've touched on the business side. I know that sort of the stuff that Shrin and I and another guy called Toby, we've definitely tried to get into the value of disabled people as employees and as customers, and obviously learn from what you did and have done and try and take that on. And that's where I mentioned the mentoring. It's been a lot of, you've both given a lot of time and support to us. I guess the other thought I had, I know that Baroness Jane Campbell has got a couple of friends and colleagues with disabilities that she's always worked closely with and also had a friendship with. I suppose my first thought and question is, do you think there's a big need for having that sort of career where it spans in and out with a similar group of people that are your friends as well?
There's no question in my mind that I've never done anything worthwhile on my own, really. I mean, yeah. I've always really valued working with other people. When I worked in childcare, I had a team of staff that were brilliant. And, so if we did things, it was as a team. With Simon and me, speaking only, of course, for myself, we created a lot of things because we were together. We had ideas because Simon would say something that would generate a thought in me and vice versa. So the answer to your question is yes. You need people around you to either to support you when things aren't going well. That's one thing, but you also need people around you to kick ideas around with. And we spent quite a lot of Friday afternoons dreaming up stuff that then became realities. So yeah, Simon, what are you?
I'm the same. I think the biggest benefit for me perhaps was that you're not alone. There's somebody else. Also someone you can trust. So you can say the unsayable, or you can throw something out that might be a little bit, you wouldn't go public. You need some sort of feedback, and that, where am I going with this and where does it go, and not to be restricted. So I've always valued that trust, and that's what you do get with Phil or Jane Campbell or the various other. I'm still quite new friends. I think I am with Jane, and maybe it's 10 years, but it's not like 20 or 30. She used to scare the life out of me because they were hardcore activists, and I've never been one of them. The other bit, I suppose, is I always fear we can be a bit cliquey, we can be a bit exclusive. And I think people, they don't necessarily put you on a pedestal, but they see you in a certain way. And actually, if someone writes to me, I'm chuffed. I want to reply. So I worry that we can be a bit exclusive sometimes. And to a certain degree, you're the next generation. There'll be another generation after you. I want it to be a bigger group. That's what I'm saying. I don't want us to be competitive with each other beyond making things better. Yeah. But I do want us to be supportive.
I guess it's that balance of, a bit of competition and geeing each other up to good, but also you more refer to that sort of safe space of if you're having a down day or there's a bit of a problem, you've got that group to share and regroup with and all the rest of it. I mean, how about being friends and in business? Like, where did you have to be very sort of aware of the lines between friendship and business?
I might jump in first because I did the two separations. I did Abnormally Funny People with my best friend from school. And that was really difficult because he's been a comedian all his life. He's never been involved in business. And that's what I'd done. So that was a really hard learning for both of us. With Phil, we weren't friends initially. We were we came together as a business, and I was a supplier or a trainer, an associate. Then I bought half the company off Phil when he was going to chuck it all in, and then we relaunched. So we become friends after,
Through business.
weirdly.
Yeah, yeah.
I've always trusted him. I've always respected him. I've always enjoyed his company. But I remember when we stopped the business and then suddenly we went to watch a football match at Wembley and I'd never been and I was with Phil and I'm like, oh, this is a new section of this relationship. We're friends now.
Yeah.
I think one thing I would say, I totally agree with what Simon's just said. That's how it worked. But I couldn't work with anybody I didn't like.
Mm.
And I couldn't work with clients I didn't like. I turned work down on the basis that I didn't like the person I was being contracted to work with. I don't believe it's possible, at least for me, to work really closely. The three of us know, and the people watching us know, disability is a very personal issue. And although we are talking about it in a very public way and encouraging businesses and others to take this very seriously, it affects us personally. And I don't think I could work with Simon if I didn't like him, as well as obviously respect him and his skills and all that sort of stuff. So for me, it is about, do I like this person? If the answer is yes, there's a good chance we can do something together. May not work, but it's worth a shout. So that would be my only difference, really.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I mean, I always felt, and it was probably more of a stereotype than an actual truth that I experienced, but I always had this idea that there was always these lines between work and leisure.
Yeah.
And someone was, Julian John was on from Delzian last week, and he was saying that a good employer, a good manager should be able to sort of say, how are you? How was your weekend? Like, is there anything going on in life that's causing a trouble? And not just from some manipulative, let's make them more productive, make them work harder, but from we're all human, right? And I think, I don't know, it'd be interesting your thought on, has that culturally changed more to the human side of management, or has it always been there, but it was sort of a stereotype that wasn't real?
I go. I don't mind.
I'm trying to remember really when we ran the business together, and now we are talking about running a business. We started off as a partnership.
Yeah.
We then ended up with lots of people working for us. And that was when it got at trickiest, because Simon and I are very different people. We have different approaches, different styles, all that sort of thing. Luckily, most of the time that worked really well in the business context where we had to manage staff. So they weren't our friends. They were employees. We expected things from them. They expected things from us. And we had to find a way of doing that. And there were times, I think, when that was tough. But our friendship made it possible. So even though we were falling out at times over things, the basic friendship was the thing that I think, for me at least, kept it going.
I think being more cold and hard looking at it, we were equal. I mean, Phil had run a very successful business on his own. And then I came in, but I owned half of it. So he would get a little bit, I don't know, might push this way or push that. When I go, it's equal now. We both have a say on that. And to give him his credit, he got to it very quickly. But because we were equal, that also meant you could trust. You knew both of us had an equal interest in the success and it going well. If you're talking about the broader picture, I've just finished doing managing mental health in the time of COVID training courses. A client said, do you know anything about this? I had some stuff, put it all together. We did 15 sessions and it was exhausting, but it was amazing. And I was talking about things I never expected to talk about, extended bereavement leave. That was never part of my disability training. We were in a new area and it was very much, I think managers and their teams have got to be able to say, how are you and how are you feeling? I remember interviewing a director from Lloyds Bank at an event Phil always hosted. And it was 2 or 3 years ago. And he said, we started resilience training for our staff. And to be provocative, I said, well, it's gone a bit far now, isn't it? Shouldn't you be teaching them about banking? And straight away he came back and said, I don't think we've gone far enough. And the good companies know that we used to do physical, now we do a lot of mental. If you haven't got that well-being and that sort of contentment and that level right, it's not just productivity, but it's just about being human and being real and all that sort of stuff. So I like that we do that. I do get a bit moody sometimes. I go, well, hold up, but don't forget, we're not social workers, we're not psychologists. We can only steer you to the right support, but you still have a responsibility to stay in touch or do whatever you got to do.
Any thoughts?
I mean, businesses
Phil? Yeah.
can't be successful. I was just going to add that businesses can't be successful, in my view, unless staff are happy, unless staff feel cared about by their managers and others.
Yeah.
So there is a need to get to know people at a level which isn't just about churning the work out. It is, understanding what's going on for them in the rest of. And disability, obviously, for many disabled people, as we well know, they're not all visible like we are. Many people are carrying around all sorts of issues that they're trying to manage to the best of their ability. If managers don't get that, then they're missing a really important part. So for me, even back when I was doing this full time all those years ago, I still recognized that you had to deal with the whole person here. You had to get to know people at a level. And I don't mean be mates with them and all that sort of thing necessarily, but at least understand the life they're leading that isn't just about work.
Martin, can I have one more?
Yep.
I had a long I think this time is very interesting. And so organizations, some of their staff will be not working as hard because there's just the work they do, they can't do it the same. There's a whole load of people who are doing 3 times as much work as they've done before, and they're doing it in really strange circumstances at home. And some of them are doing it for 75% of their salary, whereas they used to do it for 100%. I think how managers and leaders manage this situation, they're expecting a lot more from people under really strange circumstances. And you've got to be immensely supportive and immensely smart, because when we do come out of this, if we haven't treated people fairly or appropriately or checked in with them, I think that's going to linger. I think that will go, well, hang on, in the hard times, you expected a lot more of me, you paid me less. And so as a long way of me saying, I think it's critical to get that right now. And what decisions we make right now can be very difficult decisions to make, but we've got to remember why we're doing them and what will be the impact in 6 months, in 18 months.
Yeah, it's definitely another thing about longer term thinking. When you look at the politics of disability, that one of the bigger issues we're always within election cycles, and so the sort of investment that we as disabled people need to be more included doesn't resonate on a shorter 5-year election cycle. But as you say, it's similar in business. The more long term we think, the more everybody will win. And maybe the positive of business is that those sort of leaders will win. Like there will be better gains for businesses and leaders that are thinking out of the box and looking for the longer term. So I'm very keen to get on to the podcast, but just one more thing before we do. I suppose it's sort of looking at, we've already touched upon a couple of things now around sort of COVID-19, around the business climate. One very sort of kind of snapshot thought from when you were helping businesses to be more inclusive to just prior to COVID-19. And we'll start with you, Simon. What has it changed a lot? Have we progressed a lot? Were we still talking about things that we were 20, 30 years ago? But obviously then move that into what is COVID-19 doing for us now as well?
I am old, but I can't do 30 years. I can only do 20 years. So I'm going to pass that back to Phil for that one. That's a very good question. I think there's a mixture. I think there's some very good. I don't have loads of clients, so I can't say to you of the 20 companies I work with, I don't have that. So I can only talk about maybe half a dozen who I work with. There are some who are really on this, and they've got fabulous policies, procedures. They know that their staff can talk about this. When you look at those engagement scores, disabled staff, those with mental health conditions are engaged, and they're saying they like the company. So there is some really good stuff. At the risk of broadening this out to other subjects, it's still a slow chip away. I don't think we've had the revolution. I don't think we've had the seismic moment where we go, way. We felt like we had that in the sort of late 90s, early 2000s when legislation kicked in.
Yeah.
So I still think we've got a long way to go. I have 2 ways of looking at it. If a client comes to me and says, I don't know what to say to a disabled person, I say to them, go and find an outfit that can do the 101, disability 101, learn the language, get comfortable, come back when you want to talk about something more in depth. But every now and again, I accept that there are people who really want to do stuff. They're really creative, got great ideas. And I'm like, okay, let's just get over that little hump of whatever your hesitation is and off we go. So I don't know if I've answered your question. I think we're better, but yeah, the numbers are better. Lots of things are better, but
still a long way to go.
And when I hear certain things, I get really sad to think, oh, blimey, we're still at that point.
Yeah. Cool. Phil, what are your thoughts on the progress?
Well, sadly, I can go back 30 years, so I suppose, but I'm not going to. I'd sum it up in this sort of way. I think when I started in disability work, it was called disability awareness training. And I used to go in and sheep dip companies by the thousand. It was and it was all about language and not knowing what to say and all that stuff. And then one day, a group of far more intelligent people than me suddenly said, hang on a minute, this is also about gender and race and all that stuff. So we started talking about disability equality, not just awareness. Then we move from that to where I guess we are a bit more now, which is inclusion, where we recognize that it's not just about being aware or treating people equally. It's about actually including people at every level. The nothing about us without us phrase back in the 80s that I remember so well is no less true now. If disabled people aren't in the room when these conversations are taking place, then we're back where we were 30 years ago. So that has changed. I think there is a recognition now that disabled people are more than just an impairment. They are also people with lives and they want to live them to the full. I've got grandchildren. I want to go to the park with them. If it's not accessible, then I can't do that. It's that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Can I just...
Simon, you're bursting to say something.
Only because, as ever, one of us says something and the other one, oh, I've got it. I pitched recently, Equality and Human Rights Commission put out a tender for work, disability awareness training. And I thought, blimey, this is the body who are using that language. But I pitched because I thought this is a great piece of work. I'd love to work with the EHRC. I don't know where they're at on this now. So, I mean, I didn't get it. Someone else has won it, and good luck. And I hope they do a brilliant job. That last bit you said, Phil. Oh, damn it.
Inclusion, disability inclusion. I have to help him all the time.
More than an impairment.
That's it.
More than our impairment.
Thanks, guys. I have a slight fear. I have a real fear that we are being slightly pushed back to being called the lived experience part. And the lived experience that Phil and I had always informed what we did. Of course it did. That's the essence of it. But we also had a whole load of other skills around management, training, staff, running a corporate, procurement, whatever you want. I'm being invited to become the lived experience person while there's someone else who isn't disabled speaks about the organization and I presume, or the business. And then I go, oh, my life, when I go down the street, this happens to me. Now, I've always said that, but then I've gone on and said, and I want you to change by doing this, this, and this. Yeah. But while we may be going just to be the lived experience, we're pushed on as we have someone in the room. Susan Scott Parker works all around the world, and she says, nothing about us without us is everywhere. Internationally, they know without disabled people in the room, they can't go any further. But I want to make sure that our voices are strong. We're not just there to nod and go, my life's difficult.
Yeah, I can add my bit to that, which is that. Yeah, thanks very much. Before I got involved in disability, I have been disabled since I was a child. I had nothing to do with disability before the 80s, nothing whatsoever. I was running an institution. I had a budget of 3 million quid. I managed 60 staff, some psychiatrists, teachers, and all sorts of it. I was a manager. That was what I did. And I spoke about childcare at a national level to the Home Office and whatever else. And then I'm the person with lived experience. I really echo I have enormous experience in all sorts of areas that people, I guess now I use to inform things that I'm part of. But, oh yeah, you're the bloke in the wheelchair, aren't you? That's right. Yeah. Now, what tire pressures do you run at? Not, we've got a major budget crisis. What do you think we should do about it? because I could talk about that too, you know. And I think Simon's banking experience, all the other stuff, very good point. I do not want to be seen just as the disabled bloke, you know.
Of course, yeah. And I mean, as mentioned already with COVID-19, I mean, you've both referred to it at the beginning, how it's impacted you personally, but how do you think it is and will impact disability rights? Just start with Phil.
Well, first of all, I think there are going to be some serious gains. I think we have proved beyond all reasonable doubt you don't have to be in an office to work.
Yeah.
So some of the stuff that Simon and I were banging on about 30 years ago was, well, can we, well, in your case, you're mere baby arms, but the idea that, this is what happens, you see, I never get a point because he's always corrected. The point I'm trying to make is that I've forgotten what my point is now.
I'm sorry. What we were banging on about?
Home working.
And the games.
Home working. Thank you, Martin. I'm not going to thank Simon. Thank you, Martin. No, the idea that when Simon and I were doing our stock in trade stuff back in the day, a reasonable adjustment. Could somebody please work from home on a Friday afternoon for 20 minutes? You know, that kind of deal. That's been blown out of the water. The idea that we can now organize around this kind of thing, I think is huge. The worry I have is that we will miss the point that we also need social companionship. We need to be with other people and those kinds of things. And I think the isolation that many, many disabled people have experienced over many years shouldn't continue as an, you know, in a sense of as an excuse. Well, we were working from home, so that's okay. Do you know what I mean? Am I making sense?
Yeah. I mean, it's not just working. Like it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? That we could study at home, work at home, have leisure at home, like streaming the National Theatre, but we don't want it to be, so we don't need to make the theatre accessible because you can watch it at home. Yeah,
that's exactly it.
Simon?
Can I just check? My washing machine's going crazy in the back. Can you hear it?
No.
Great, if it becomes a problem. I'm with Phil. I think there's going to be some gains. I like the fact, particularly I was talking to a colleague, Ange, and saying about people with chronic health conditions, which we never used to use as a phrase, but we do now. Those people who wouldn't be going into an office have fluctuating conditions. They may well be seen to be absolutely productive now because they can do stuff at home, just being a bit more flexible. We had a long chat with Joanna Wooten, who's saying, I think more people are saying they have a disability in the broadest sense because of COVID-19, because one, maybe you're anxious about how you're going to be treated, but secondly, there are some advantages in supermarkets, or so that there's more of an encouragement to come forward and say, this is what I have. I mean, it's been amazing in the medical profession that they've been working with each other for years, and suddenly some of them said, I've got diabetes, I've got asthma, I can't do this. And you're like, I never knew that. So that whole concept of what is restrictive may have changed. I have a little anxiousness, which is as we come out, that we don't get left behind, that we're not seen as, well, we've just got to get on with it, guys, and sorry that you can't because of whatever you got. We've got to crack on. Now, a part of me, my economist hat, says, yeah, absolutely. But the flip side of that is, yeah, but we need to be part of the solution and we need to be involved, and I don't want us to be left behind, whether that's socially or economically.
I think the other
without us, isn't it? Even in rebuilding an economy, it should be disabled people at the table.
I think one other benefit, I hope it's a benefit, is the conversations that have gone on. Jane Campbell, Baroness Jane Campbell, and others talking about, you know, disabled lives matter. The idea that we're vulnerable and that kind of, well, we won't give you the treatment because, etc. I hope that conversation has been in some ways binned, because, you know, everybody's life in the context of COVID we should all expect to be treated this, you know, as best possible care that's available. So I hope some of that, you know, as you know, I'm part of Not Dead Yet UK, and we're very watchful about medical professions seeing our lives as not worth as much as other people's and stuff. So that conversation's had an airing during COVID, which I think is helpful. Yeah.
You mentioned at the beginning, I forget which one of you said about the social model. Like, what do you think the social model, like, where is that standing with where we are? Is it still very the leading theory, or is there a need to update it in some way? I don't know who wants to take that one, but
I think
Probably neither of us.
Yeah,
no, I might go
oh,
first because I think we're slightly different on this one. We've debated it 5 times on our podcast at various points. The same person I mentioned, Ange, says she wants to write a paper about why it doesn't work anymore, or why it doesn't work for a whole group of people. I went to Mike Oliver's memorial in Kent, and this was the guy who we say gave birth to the concept.
yeah.
And they said at the time, this was never about disability. The social model is about people who are marginalized from main society. And then it's about looking at what are the barriers that can be removed to bring them in.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that for me is it in a nutshell. And the joy of it when you get it, it says, oh, it's not just me. I can't walk very far. I've got pain in my legs. But if I can use this and I don't get judged and I don't get stigma and people are flexible and yada, yada, that will help my life enormously. But the idea that it is a solution for everybody at every time. I mean, part of the skill of the beauty of the social model is it never ends. So whatever you throw at it, there'll be a tweak and that kind of meant to solve it. But that doesn't, if I've got a heart attack, I've got a passive pain and I need something else. So I'm not quite making it. I want something that supports it. I want something that takes it to another level. A bit of me's tired. I mean, Tom Shakespeare, 2007, said it doesn't work. It's not fit for purpose. That's 13, 14 years ago. So why are we not either moved on if there's something better, or why haven't we adjusted it to make it better? So a bit of me's tired, but yeah, I like it for me. Yeah, sorry.
It almost, it sounds a little bit like the capitalism argument, that there's so much around capitalism that doesn't really work for everybody, but yet there isn't an obvious alternative to capitalism. I just felt like there was a parallel there in some way. But yeah, Phil, would you like to add anything?
Well, I suppose for me, there was, as I said a few minutes ago, I didn't have anything to do with disability until the 80s, really. And as part of that enunciation, I came across the social model, and it just was, I mean, everybody says it, of my generation certainly, you know, it's a light bulb moment. Suddenly I realized I wasn't the problem here. It wasn't down to me. There were some things that were down to me, but so I think I basically hold with the truth that the social model is still very applicable. The problem with it is, are we applying it in a 21st century way? So Simon referred to, for example, the fact that when the social model was being talked about, we didn't talk about people with non-visible conditions and all that kind of stuff. That wasn't relevant. You know, what was relevant? It was all white blokes in wheelchairs. Let's be clear. That's what it was all about. Well, those days are long gone. You know, we are now looking at but the essence of it remains the same. Are you having things put in your way by society, either through just thoughtlessness or deliberately to exclude you? And if you are, then we have to do something about that. Now, your impairment's something else. That's for you to kind of talk about. But so for me, I still think the social model, and, you know, we've had Tom on our podcast and he's very eloquent in this area and I have a lot of respect for him. He doesn't say chuck it away. What he's saying is it's not fit for purpose in lots of ways. And I tend to agree with that, but it's been liberating for me, and I know many, many other disabled people. So I like you. I think, by the way, isn't an opposite of could we not try communism? Would that not be an alternative? I don't know what the equivalent of the social model is in that context.
God knows. Yeah, this sounds like a slippery slope now, so I'm going to move it on. Did you want to add something, Simon?
Say again.
Did you want to add something?
I sort of did, but I'm going to pause it. I suppose my brief bit is, Phil is right that when we were doing that original training, we would deliberately say we are not sick. We don't have anything that is going to stop us. What's stopping it is you or the steps or whatever. If you have a condition that gives you pain or limitation or fatigue or whatever it might be, when we ran a reasonable adjustment service for Lloyds Bank, the trickiest ones were chronic fatigue syndrome, because we could make all the adjustments in the world, but it didn't necessarily work if someone couldn't be predictable, or they didn't even know how to manage it themselves. So it was immensely difficult. And that's my concern. How do we, but I do think COVID might have helped with that. So the people who sit there working in bed, and we're like, well, that's madness. Now we go, well, actually, quite a lot of us have been doing it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Interesting. I mean,
working around your condition. Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to be one of those, we won't really know what effect COVID had for, 20 or 30 years as an approximate time span. So a few things coming in. Mansour, good to hear you all.
hey,
Good to see Simon on a screen instead of from a taxi. Do I ask, Simon?
we're on the Euston Road, what it is, the A40, and I was in an Uber. He was in a accessible black cab, and I remember just looking across, we're in the traffic jam, and there he was by the window. I went, "Oh, Mansour!" We waved and said hello. Years ago, I think he was just about to work for PwC, and they got a bit wobbly about it, and they came to us, and we had to unblock this thing, and they were being way over the top. But no, I remember seeing him in the cab, and it's like, oh my life, that's really weird.
So Catherine says, hi. I think we're getting into like some testimonials and creds now. Mike saying, I've personally learned so much from Phil and Simon over the past 2 decades. Thank you for bringing them on together.
Mike,
Rich Hobson, hi all. Sorry, go on, Simon, go on.
Mike, follow his Twitter feed. He's doing some really great stuff around race and ethnicity.
Awesome, yeah. Do you know what his handle is?
No, but it'll be Mike Clark, I think.
Okay, yeah. Cool. Definitely check that out. So Rich, I think you Phil Friend, the man that changed my mindset, legend.
It was a big hammer. I used a big hammer.
Yeah. Well, do you know what Mike's now picked up on my faux pas to Simon?
Yeah.
But no, interesting to say about a hammer for Rich, Phil, because when you were talking about the social model, there was that side of it that sometimes people can become more the victim mindset, because it's like, oh, the world is so full of barriers, it's not my fault, so I'm just going to be, and that's not relating to Rich's story, but it just sort of sparked that point up that, you know, sometimes we're liberated by the social model, but we also have to have a good kick up the bum and say, only you can get out there and make your own life, but also make the change for everyone. Is that something you've come across before?
Oh, one of the things that Simon and I developed when we worked together was personal development programs, and Lloyd's Banking Group, God bless them, have been doing it for years. And Rich would have been part of that program because I used to run it for Lloyd's. I think the thing that you've just said, though, Martin, is really important here. There is the social construct stuff, the barriers and all of that.
Yeah.
But am I the biggest barrier? Is it me, actually, that's the issue here? And I think the personal development programs allowed us to sit in a room with disabled people and really have an honest conversation about, are you the barrier? Are you the one that's refusing? And I was incredibly privileged to be part of that program. I've loved every minute of this. One of the most important parts of my life was running personal development programs, because if you know it isn't you, you can then go into real conversations about who the problem is.
Yeah.
You know it isn't you. So Rich triggered that thought, and I know Simon agrees with that. We've done some really interesting stuff around personal development programs.
To add to Phil's bit, I will go traveling, working around the world, and someone will find me in a lift, and I go, "Oh, do you know Phil Friend?" And I go, "Yes, I do. Well, he helped me on this thing." I'm like, "Yeah, okay, thanks very much." Time and time again, Phil, when he stopped doing the personal development program, there were hundreds of people who wrote a card to say the impact that it had on their lives. I mean, talk about unbelievably, immensely powerful and just gorgeous. I've only done them for about 5 years. Phil's had a lovely point, because we might not all go to sort of special school, or so you don't have that hanging out with loads of people like you. And we might be the problem because we've had years of hiding it, or feeling a bit oppressed by it, or being fearful of talking about it, or managing and coping in our own little way. Suddenly you're in a room with 12 people who have all got something, and we don't mind talking about it, and we're very open about it, and you get tears, you get understanding. And that's, Phil said, it's a bit like going to special school for a couple of days. You get other people and you want to help them, and it is an immensely no, I don't know what the word is, but I agree with Bill. I've only done it for 5 years or so, and you come away going, oh my goodness me, I don't feel responsible and good enough to do it. But the flip side is when I see the changes in people, God, bloody hell.
I think one of the things the personal development program reminded me of, and Simon's right, I went through special schools and spent years and years in hospital and so on. Personal development program for many people is the only time they've been in a room with people who are not like them from the impairment point of view, but where it is quite okay to be who you are and to talk about it and to receive other people's thoughts about how you might deal with it differently. It's well, Simon said it. If I regret retirement in any way at all, it's that I don't do that course anymore, because I loved it. It was absolutely brilliant.
And one add-on, I remember getting a bit panicked when all the wheelchair users had been through the course, and then we were moving on to people with autism, people with mental health conditions, chronic health conditions. And I thought, I'm a short bloke. How can I do this? Yet it still worked because they could see what we were talking about. So sometimes we are very different and the issues that we have are very different. There's no two ways about that. But that coming together and unpicking it, putting it back together, that worked for any condition, impairment, disability, whatever your language is.
Yeah,
we're in charge of the structure. The delegates are in charge of the content. So you make it safe. You make it, an environment where people can be open, but they then decide what they're going to talk about. And that's really what it's about. That's the chemistry of it. So it doesn't matter what your impairment is. It doesn't matter what your condition is.
Right.
If you feel safe, you can talk about it. And then others can hear you and offer their thoughts. And that's really the essence. Dave Rees, my colleague, who I can't not mention in this context, Dave Rees, who's a non-disabled guy that I ran the courses with, we've always remembered that it was the structure that we created and then let disabled people or people with chronic conditions, whatever they are, just to come out and talk. It's very, very moving, actually, and very privileged to be part of that.
My one sentence, Laura is my co-pilot. Laura's the one I do it with. She's the non-disabled one, and you can't do it without that balance.
That's interesting as well. Yeah. There's so much we could go into that whole area there, isn't there? Just before I forget, on Twitter, it's Mike Clark Als. For
Thanks,
anyone
Mike.
that wants to follow Mike. But yeah, I mean, it's that touching on identity and that sort of balance of being proud of part of you being disabled, but then not only being defined by having a disability. And that's quite a hard one to balance because there's no right or wrong. And everyone, I guess it's a spectrum in a way for different people as to how much, or like for me, my whole career has ended up being very similar to you two with being in disability, whereas others, they are proud of their disability, but they're not working in that environment as their job. And so, it's just very interesting, that whole area.
You've reminded me, the fact that you're always learning, and Joe Stromando is a short bloke. He's a philosopher and a bioethicist, I think, in the States. There's a woman who was young. She just died. She's a disability rights activist. Joe is saying, be proud and of your disability. It's okay. And she said, that's not the way. What we need is community. There's a whole load of people who they haven't got community. Now, that made me just go, oh my goodness, I hadn't thought. I want pride. I want to be proud. But that other bit of community, maybe we need to get that first. And that comes from the courses that you do, that you bond and then you find your pride.
Yeah, there's been one of the most amazing things about the personal programs we ran was that people stay in touch for years. They maintain the friendships. They seek each other out when there are issues that they want to talk about together. So I think that sense of community does come from those things. And of course, going back when I was young, we got that from the special schools. We'd all been through that kind of process. We all understood what that felt like. So thankfully, most disabled people do not go through that anymore. But it did have a benefit of at least making you feel you understood things that perhaps now has been lost a bit. But
yeah, I mean, for me, primary school, I was the only disabled in the village and at the Little Britain.
Yeah.
But then secondary, I had to go further away because the local one wasn't accessible. But that meant there were some disabled students, but particularly uni, I was in the two adapted flats of halls of residence. And, I can remember earlier on being in a nightclub with all the other disabled students and feeling a bit like, quite bluntly, I was 19, 20, am I going to pull if I'm with a group of disabled people? And that was my main, aim in life, sort of thing. But like I went through a lot of emotions on that balance. Maybe at one point I was too far over there of not feeling comfortable with disabled people.
Absolutely.
But then the other side is to just be in that flat with the disabled students would have missed the fact that there were lots of diversity on campus of other, so it's it's interesting.
I like our little time together because that gives me my support, the shot in the arm, but that isn't my whole life. I want to be out with everybody.
And it kind of comes back to what we're talking about near the beginning of having that in the the business sense, and when you're trying to be part of disability rights, to have those like-minded people there, because a lot of my work now, I'm more often with clients and businesses very much like your business was. So I'm not as in that context as around the community. So it's vital for me that I still spend part of my week on Disability Horizons to keep, for me, as much as giving back and supporting the community. Otherwise you could almost lose touch of what's going on in the community as well. So lots of variables and factors. I'm aware we're getting nearer the end. I don't know if you two have got to dive off at one, but we tend to finish about one. I just want to get a bit of a chat about the podcast and other things you're working on at the moment, and any plans. So feel free, who wants to go first? But it'd just be great to hear a bit more about the podcast, really.
Well, I mean, the podcast, I can't remember how it came about. Simon and I doing one of our things and up it popped, I guess. But we've been doing for the last 4 years. We are in the process of rethinking the podcast and how we want to do it now, because it's 4 years on. But it gives us an opportunity. One lovely thing, it gives us a chance to work together. I just love being around Simon for the podcasts and things. But it's also an opportunity. It's an opportunity like yours, really, to meet people, discuss things with them, see what's going on, and so on and so forth. And it's it's sort of a vehicle for getting our views and stuff out there. So long may it continue. I think YouTube and video and that kind of thing's beginning to interest us too, and how we might expand our horizons a bit. But nothing concrete as such, but you'll be hearing a few things from us in the next 2 or 3 weeks about the podcast and stuff.
Sounds
Simon, the best feedback we get about our podcast is the sort of relationship. Banter can be a heavy word, but the sort of the bounce back that the two of us have. And so the idea to sort of interview people, but also just to have us to free flow and talk about whatever we want to talk. And that is the joy. You're in a safe space. You can say what you want to say. That's lovely, and I enjoy that. Someone said to me, "Oh, but you're all disabled people listen." I reckon 70% are not disabled. We got a mailing list of people we've worked with over the years, and not all of them are disabled. So I hope that the sort of disabled people love it and get it, but there's a whole bundle of other people that can just listen to it because it's either funny or engaging or interesting or whatever. Maybe it's annoying. I think 1 or 2 people said they want to throw the phone across the window when we say something that annoys them, and I'm like, that's quite good. I mean, not too much, but
create debate. Absolutely. Well, where can people find it? Where is the podcast?
Well, it's the Phil and Simon show. It's on iTunes, and it's on. He's laughing because one of the jokes we have is that at the end of the show, every time Simon says, "So Phil, what's our email address?" and I can never bloody remember it, but I'm going to try. But we're on Twitter and Facebook and the usual channels, but we've also got the philandsimon@gmail.com is where you could drop us a line. And actually, the thing we most want is for people to respond, to actually take the trouble to just say we like the show or we didn't or something. So we'd love to hear from people. And we do try and name check our listeners whenever we can.
If you are watching this in July, we will have moved. It will be called Minty and Friend. There's a different thing going on, but it will all redirect you. So you've caught us just at a little cusp. But search for Simon Minty or Phil Friend, and it will come up 3rd or 4th, I hope. Yeah.
Cool. That sounds good. Have you got? There's one other thing I want to ask. Have you got a couple more minutes? Have you got to be on?
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, obviously, we've touched on podcasting and sort of social media. You mentioned you're on Twitter and everything. What something that's fascinated me, as you know, like, you know, I've been massively into blogging and social media and building community. And the thing I've been trying to get my head around more and more through these interviews on the Daily Sib is, does and how can social media still lead to change? Because I just wonder that sometimes content is great and having that community is great, but it's how does that connect with businesses, with government, with the big charities? Just be great to get your thoughts on the good, the bad, the ugly of social media in terms of disability rights.
Well, from my point of view, something you said is, and Simon and I know this, is content is everything. What you say, even if I disagree with what you say, if you're saying it with passion and you're saying it based on some, you know, you've actually given it some thought, then I listen. I think what social media is really interesting for is that it's allowing us to listen to all these conversations, to form our views about them, and then decide which particular line we want to follow. In my day, it was telly or radio, and that was about it. There was nothing else. Now you get bombarded, and that's the problem, really. It's sorting out which messages do I really want to pay attention to, and the people who shout loudest aren't necessarily the ones that you want to listen to. So content, be critical, but be analytical, if that's the right word, of what you're watching and listening. I don't watch everything. I mean, I watch you and I listen to you, and the reason I do that, Martin, let me share with you, and is because I want to know what your generation is thinking about. What are the challenges that your generation faces that are different from mine? So, so in that sense, you're hitting the spot, because I'm watching you. I'm listening to what you're saying. I may not be reacting to it, but it is feeding information in. So just keep doing it. I think people will form their own views.
So almost like it doesn't have to result in the landmark 95 Disability Discrimination Act. That it's just by doing it is valuable.
Yeah,
it's a tough call, because it is what is the thing that everyone gathers around now in disability rights to push it forward, bearing in mind ours was very narrow. We had a narrow brief. Now it's so broad. How do you bring everybody on board?
Hard.
I get muddled with social media. I enjoy it. There's some great things. My tip is to follow 10 or 15 people that you actually fundamentally disagree with. I'm scared that we are going into echo chambers where we all just love each other, where we're not, if anyone dissents, then we block them and we never hear again. I'm not saying Holocaust deniers. I'm not like stupid like that, but just people who kind of go, oh, they annoy me when they say that. But we'll follow them, find out a bit more about them, because you need to be sophisticated enough to win through an argument. And if you're not hearing, all you're hearing is people go, yeah, well, I love you. You're so brave. You're so strong. You're not going to win the argument when it comes to the real. We talked to this Jane Campbell. Since COVID, the government would come and make an announcement on the daily briefing. Social media would go ballistic that night. Go, you've forgotten this, you missed out that. The next day's briefing, we're going to put in this, we're going to change that. So it was very immediate. I've never seen it that strong. I like that may well stay there. Social media can be immensely powerful. But as we've also said, I still think going into rooms and sitting with people is going to be important. And also sometimes what we might say on social media may be different to what I go back to the very bit that I love talking with Phil about, is I can say what I really think. And you can explore those weird things to then come back to something that could be really useful.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's basically, there's always going to be that space for in the room and maybe protest, and like it's not only digital, but it does give a lot easier way to connect and to sort of formulate arguments as well. Yeah,
I suppose the thing we have to watch is, you know, as everybody, Simon and I were talking about this the other day, there are 2.5 million people who are shielded in this country, and they're not going anywhere. And they're not going to be going anywhere for some time. So when we're all back in the pubs and the clubs and we're doing our gym and all that kind of stuff, they're still sitting at home. We really cannot forget them. And I think what social media gives us is an opportunity for people to say stuff that have been excluded. What worries me is, who's talking to the people that can't get on the social media thing? Where's their voice? because I think they, are they still writing newsletters, or are they still sending through GPO or good old Royal Mail? I mean, I don't know, but the movement is not just about those of us who are making a noise. It's about a lot of people that are not making a noise, who can't make a noise for all sorts of reasons. We need to find ways of getting in touch with that if we can.
Yeah, I saw them like doing the live streaming of funerals, because obviously COVID-19, it's a blanket benefit, but there are particularly older people that haven't got iPads or don't know how to get on the laptop.
Well, it's also not just older people, Martin. It's poor people.
Yeah, no, true.
They can't afford it. They can't pay for broadband or whatever it is. So
absolutely, yeah, no, that's interesting.
Has anyone said congratulations? You're getting married. Are you getting married soon, or have you had to bump the date?
Well, we've been engaged years, and we were meant to get married 2 Fridays ago in Poland, and we had to reschedule it because of all the goings on. So I'm still not officially married, but we had a good sort of online virtual party with everyone that could have been there. So, obviously next year, fingers crossed, it will all go through properly. But we didn't sit around dwelling on the day. We still got everyone together and had a good time.
Cool. Good stuff.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you. Ross has just joined, saying Ross Hovey.
He's a good man.
Cool.
He supports a very strange football team, doesn't he, Ross Hovey? He's got a problem with football. I don't know how he's been managing. Well, his beloved Liverpool haven't been playing.
It's a bit dodgy if they're going to win that title or not, isn't it?
Yeah, Chelsea forever. Just say Chelsea.
Oh my goodness
me. Good stuff. All right. Well, I think we'll wrap up. And is there anything else you wanted to mention while we're still here?
Well, for my part, thank you. We were doing a podcast once a week and got quite tired. The fact that you're knocking these out every day, well done you. I hope you enjoy them and get energy, as well as we know how much work it is and how much all the background stuff is. So good on you. I hope you're not too exhausted and you're getting good feedback and stuff.
Thank you. No, I mean, it has been energizing, and it's seeing, I keep talking about seeing the bigger picture, and you've referred to it with your podcast, that you start to see how things do join or could join, and you're almost a bit like a football manager. You start to see how to try and join the dots, and that's really exciting to get that overall view of it all. I'm booked up for the next month. It's crazy how many amazing people are out there and they want to get involved, come and talk. So it's been a lot of fun. I don't know if I do get tired out, I'm going to be able to stop now, but I'll worry about that if I get tired anyway.
I just add to Simon's thoughts. Yeah, good on you. I think this is it's a useful vehicle for people to tune in and once a day and see what's going on out there, particularly at the moment where so many of us can't go anywhere else. So well done you, Martin. It's not easy, this, Simon says. And
of course, it wouldn't have been possible. It's because of COVID-19 I'm able to do it, because I would have been traveling, sat on a train to give a 1-hour talk in Newcastle or whatever it would have been. So it's given me the time and space to be able to do it, which is a silver lining.
We'll get you on our show. Give us a couple of weeks to settle down and we'll get you back.
Thank you. That'll be good. I'm looking forward to seeing the new format as well. Cool. All right then, guys. Have a lovely day. Thanks everyone for watching, either live or on the replay, and for all the comments and questions. There's a lively bunch today. You'll have to bung those tenors out to everyone after.
Expensive that was. Last night on social media, we were so busy, I tell you.
All right, nice one. And thanks for coming on, you two. It was a real pleasure as always to catch up and hear what's going on and shoot the breeze.
Thank you, Martin. Best of everything to you.
Cheers.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.